It's solving problems. I remember when I used to recruit, and obviously UCLA is a tremendous institution, and I used to say to recruits, you get out of education what you put into it. And they said, well, what's your major? And I said, well, your major is not so important. All what it shows is, can you take on a task? Can you complete the task, in a successful manner? Can you problem solve? Because everything we do in life is that same thing. So it's not about, yeah, there's certain fields like to become a doctor or an engineer, you need certain things, but in general, all our tasks are the same. Is identifying a problem, coming up with possible solutions, picking the right solution. And people who are more successful pick the right solution more often than the wrong one, and people who are less successful pick the wrong solution more often. It's the same. It's the same in coaching. So, long answer to your question.
So you coached at UCLA for quite some time, and coming to the major leagues, what are some of the things that maybe you missed on the collegiate level, and some of the differences between coaching on the collegiate level now?
You miss certain things because it was everybody was sort of the same age, so everybody's going through the same thing, so now you've got guys in your team who are 18, 19 and are trying to mature, and you've got other guys that have 3 kids at home, or Tyrone in this case, 5 kids at home and a wife, and you're trying to see if the guy gets enough sleep, and you tell him, why don't you stay for another 2 hours and take a nap on the couch before you go home. So there's all kinds of little things that you go through that way. But the fun part certainly of UCLA was, and the reason I got into coaching and left accounting was, you could have an impact on some people's lives, and you could maybe be able to relate to what they're doing and help them. And and believe me, we had some guys who struggled in school, and they used to have to come by and they'd have to meet with me once a week and show me, not just with the academic people, but show me what they were doing each week. And because I would explain to them, you have to do something to fail, like not go to class, not do your homework. You have to do something to fail. And so we went through those problems. I mean, I had one player early in my career, Paul Caligiuri, Grant knows him. I mean, I probably sat in Drake Stadium talking to him about life. When you added it all up, probably about 300 or 400 hours, somewhere in that neighborhood. So that seems like a chore, but it's also something that's it's a special bond. Grant was one of the first players I brought down to UCLA and recruited. He came down to me from Northern California, and he was a tremendous leader, and he was a tremendous captain of our team. And there's still stories that we tell, and the bond that you form in college, those teammates are guys who become friends for the rest of your lives, and you always relate to them. So you sort of miss that. At the pros now, it becomes more, it's a job, it becomes more hardened. Sorry, you're not good enough, we'll see you. I mean, you never wanted to lose that personal contact. I always said if that became easy for me, I'd quit. It's still got to be hard, but on the same token, you're dealing with the whole spectrum of life challenges. So you have a player on your team who's not getting healthy, his wife's pregnant. This might be his last year. If I end up cutting him, what's going to happen with his insurance? And those are things that enter your mind if you're a caring person. So now you're trying to figure out, okay, how do you go about this? And then other kids, you're trying to say, you know what? McDonald's every day is not the best preparation. So you're going at both extremes. Yeah.
So I just started coaching middle school girls lacrosse. So what's the best advice you can give a new coach?
Wow. That's a big question. I mean, the main thing is, what I've always felt is you have to be honest with your players. I think, when your athletes are playing for you, if they play badly, they don't want to hear you say, hey, you did really well, because they know they didn't do well, but they don't need you to be brutally honest. They don't need to hear you say, that was the worst play I've ever seen in my life. But they want you to be honest. Hey, that wasn't good. Let's talk about how to make it better. So you try and turn everything into a positive thing, but you got to be honest with them. Obviously, a sport you coach, you're usually probably passionate about. So if you can pass on your passion to them, and you're excited about it, you pass on that excitement so they understand why you're excited about it, and that you care. So you're passionate, you care, you're going to be honest with them. That's the most important thing. And then, obviously at that age, they've got a lot of ups and downs and a lot of issues and a lot of other things going on in life. And So part of coaching sort of becomes psychology. You know, it's a little bit of child psychology. Pay attention to the ones who are doing what you want them to do. Because in every group when you coach, you have a group that'll listen and follow, and you have another group that won't listen and follow, but the majority are in the middle. And that middle group is the biggest group, and they're trying to see who you pay attention to. So if you spend a lot of time with the misfits, the ones who aren't paying attention, they go, well, if I don't pay attention, then she'll spend time with me. So you got to spend time with them, and at the same point, you know, get your point across to the others. Then you get those people into your group. So now the big group is the group that's responding to you, and then the other ones are left out. So that's, you know, that's just part of the psychology of coaching.
Who do you think is going to step up after Casey Keller isn't with the team to kind of get on field general?
You know, obviously, I think there's different people who want to do that. Jeff Park talks and organizes when he plays. Patrick Ianni talks. I mean, there's subtle talk that you don't see. The goalkeeper's talk is sometimes more evident because it usually happens after the ball's out of bounds, so you see a very irate doing things. So everybody says, "Ah, he's really involved," you know. So, but you know, obviously replace that leadership, and sometimes when you have somebody leading and you got other people underneath, you don't know truly how good a leader that person will become until you remove the other person. You know, when I was coach of the LA Galaxy, I thought we had some good players, and the captain of our team was Robin Frazier, who's now the coach of Chivas, and Robin was a great captain, a good leader, but at the same token, it was suppressing about 3-4 other guys. And because of salary cap, I had to trade Robin away, and as I traded Robin away, all of a sudden Greg Banny blossomed and Kevin Hartman blossomed, and all of a sudden we won an MLS Cup. You know, so sometimes when a dominant person steps away, now the others sort of grow into that gap that gets left. So it's not always a negative thing, but right now we're very, very happy to have Casey. He's been a great goalkeeper for us.
Yeah. Going into today's game, what are you specifically looking for against Portland besides beating them?
It's you know, the midfield matchup will be really interesting. The matchup between Alonso, we're going to start Servando Carrasco in the midfield with Alonso. So the matchup between Carrasco and Alonso against Chara and Jewsbury is really important because part of the game is going to be won or lost there. They're a team that plays a little more direct than we do. They try and pressure you a lot, so they're going to try and up the tempo of the game by playing very direct forward, trying to put pressure on us, and at times we're going to be trying to slow down the tempo. So it becomes a little bit of how good are we at changing the ball from one side of the field to the other, because they're going to rush over here to pressure, and so we've got to change the ball to the other side and get them to rush over there. And then as we change it again, at that movement, as we get them moving, you know, hopefully somebody falls asleep, and then all of a sudden a gap gets created. You know, so we want to be able to change the point of attack, move the ball from side to side as much as possible. We want to get at their back four because we think that's the weakness of their team. We think their front is actually pretty good. You know, we think Cooper's pretty good, Perlaza's good because he stays up high. We got to make sure he doesn't slip behind us on a breakaway. And the other thing to look for, if we do what we want to do, we want to force them to bring the ball out on their left-hand side, because we think Bruner and Jeremy Hall are better with the ball than Wallace and Danso. So we want Danso to play with his left foot, and so we want to force the ball a little bit to that side of the field. It also forces the ball into Evans, who we think is a pretty good defender for a midfielder. So it allows us to get a matchup that I think is a favorable one for us. So those are all little things that you try to do. The unique thing about soccer that's different, you know, if you're doing basketball or football, okay, if you say this is the game plan and it's not working well,
yeah,
you know, there's always stoppages so you can remind everybody. In basketball, I mean, coaches in basketball have the most control because through timeouts they can kill momentum, and, you know, they can impact the game. In soccer, you're sitting there and after 10 minutes, everybody forgets what they're supposed to do. You're like going, guy, why isn't he out there telling them? You know, sometimes you wish you could call timeout, and then that's why my voice is more hoarse than this after games, and you know, because at least I got to get rid of my tension and scream out there. You can't hear me, so it's good. But again, I'm glad you guys are all coming, you know, to the games, and you know, it's great to see so many Bruins. I know there's a lot of Bruins in this area, and we actually have a lot of Bruins on our staff. There's Grant, Chris Henderson is another Bruin.